intestines and tail hairs of various quadruped beings there. One end of each string was fixed to one edge of this frame, and the other to pegs inserted into another edge. These pegs were inserted in such a way that they could be freely turned in their what are called peg holes, and the strings fixed onto them could at will be tightened or loosened as much as was necessary for the required number of vibrations. Of the great number of strings stretched on the Law of Heptaparaparshinokh, 49 were colored white, and the totality of vibrations, that is to say, the definite sound obtained from the vibrations of each one of them, was called a whole center of gravity of the octave, which definite sound corresponded to that which your favorites now call a whole note. Each 7 strings of these gravity center sounds, or whole notes, were then and are still called an octave. In this way there were stretched on the apparatus Law of Heptaparaparshinokh 7 octaves of whole notes, the totality of the general consonants of which gave what is called the sacred Hanziano, that is, just what the 2 great brothers suspected, and which happened almost exactly to coincide with what, as I've already said, they then named Neo-Gnossian world sound. Each such an octave of strings on the Law of Heptaparaparshinokh gave that totality of vibrations which, according to the calculations of the great twin brothers, correspond to the totality of vibrations of all those cosmic substances which, issuing from 7 separate independent sources, compose one of the 7 centers of gravity of the fundamental common cosmic Ansapalnian octave. Each white string on the Law of Heptaparaparshinokh was tuned separately by this Chinese learned being, King Tu Tos, in such a way that it gave that average number of vibrations which, according to the calculations of the great brothers, ought also to be in substances which are one of the 7 centers of gravity of the given whole totality of substances, which in its turn is one of the 7 centers of gravity of the fundamental cosmic octave of substances. On the Law of Heptaparaparshinokh, each octave, as well as each whole note of the octave, had names of their own, and namely the highest octave of the strings was called Arachiapalnish, the second highest Erkrordiapan, the third highest Errordiapan, the fourth highest Korodiapan, the fifth highest Piangiapan, the sixth highest Vetserordiapan, the 7th highest Achterordiapan, and the gravity center strings themselves were painted white and were called the same in all octaves, but with the addition of the name of the given octave itself, and namely these whole notes were called the first highest Adashtanas, the second highest Evotanas, the third highest Gavorktanis, the fourth highest Maikitanis, the fifth highest Midotanis, the sixth highest Lukotanas, the 7th highest Sonitanis. The contemporary beings of the earth now call these same whole notes Do, Si, La, Sol, Fa, Mi, Re. By the way, my boy, in order that the greatness of these 2 saints, brothers, should be still more evident to you, I draw your attention to the fact that the calculations made by them and the qualitativeness established by these calculations of what is called the vivifyingness of vibrations of sound which corresponded according to their suppositions with the vivifyingness of cosmic sources of substances, appeared to coincide almost exactly with reality. This merit of theirs was all the greater because as terrestrial beings, they had no true information about this, and were able to make their correct suppositions and almost accurate calculations of many objective cosmic truths, exclusively only thanks to their own conscious labors and intentional sufferings. Further, on this Lav Mers Noch, in each octave, between these white strings or whole notes, this learned being, King Tu Toz, strung in certain places 5 further strings, this time painted black. These black strings, however, he named Demisachsachsa, which, according to the terminology of the beings of the earth, corresponded to what they call half-notes. And these half-note strings on the Lav Mers Noch were not strung between those whole notes between which, according to the indications of the saints Chun Kil Tez and Chun Tro Pel, there is, according to the sacred Heptaparaparshinokh, no possibility of the independence of the evolution and involution of the vibrations of sound. And these places, they were the first to call gaps. And in the given places of the octaves where these gaps ought to be, this learned being, King Tu Toz, strung special strings between the whole notes made of the tail hairs of beings called their horse. These hair strings gave vibrations which were not always the same, and King Tu Toz named these vibrations chaotic. The number of these vibrations obtained from these hair strings depended on the stretching of them, as in the case of other strings, but on other causes, chiefly on 3 causes ensuing from surrounding cosmic results, namely, on the action of the vibrations dispersed around them obtained from other strings of the Lav Mers Noch, on the state of what is called the temperature of the atmosphere at the given moment, and on the radiations of the beings present nearby without distinction of brain system. On this Lav Mers Noch, between these white, black, and hair strings, there were also strung in each octave 14 strings also from twisted intestines, which were painted red and called Kisukeshur. And if contemporary beings of the earth were to use these strings, they would call them quarter notes. In addition to this, all those quarter note strings, which were stretched on either side of the hair strings, were fitted in such a way that the vibrations issuing from them could at any moment be changed as desired by means of tightening or loosening these strings, and thus the vibrations they produced could be regulated and by ear blended with the frequently changing vibrations obtained from the hair strings. And this was so done because, thanks to the frequently changing vibrations of the hair strings, the qualitativeness of which I already said depended on the temperature of the atmosphere, on the radiations of the beings present nearby, and on many other causes, the vibrations of these red strings acquired such a property that if they did not blend with the vibrations of the hair strings, the vibrations issuing from them would act on the beings present very cacophonically harmfully, even to their possible total destruction. With frequent changing, however, of the stretching of the red strings, and with the blending of their vibrations with the general vibrations issuing from the Lav Mers Noch, their harmlessness was obtained. That is to say, owing to this, the general vibrations issuing from the Lav